And welcome to Overview Scrutiny Committee meeting this evening. Can I start, please, with apologies for absences?
Yes, we've had apologies from Councillor Herdman.
Thank you. And any declarations of interest? No. Minutes of the previous meeting. So just on that particular point, I did raise in that meeting on the budget about a couple of items, and we did think that Ian might come tonight, but I don't know if that's happening or not happening, or whether you're able to give an update on that particular point. Or we can wait to that item if you like. Okay, that's fine. All right, thank you. Can I have, I'm happy to propose the minutes. Do I have a seconder? John, thank you to second. And can I have a show of hands, please, for approval? Perfect, thank you very much. Do we have any questions from members of the public?
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. Right, moving then swiftly on to our star attraction this evening, the EA. Thank you very much for coming, to Suzanne and Dave, who've come to talk to us this evening. So they've got a short presentation. The committee did submit a number of questions, of which they were good enough to give us responses to in advance of the meeting. I have said to the members that if there's anything that they'd like to just further ask on or come back to you on, that would be okay. But I have also reiterated to everyone in the room that, as you have said, Suzanne, you know an awful lot about the Environment Agency, but you don't know everything. And if there is a need to come back with more detail, then that would be fine, and we'll allow that to happen. We've got also representatives from Action Avon Vale and other residents. Oh, you. Okay, thank you very much. So we've got, and they'll be able to also just participate in the meeting when we get to those questions. So I will hand over to you both to give your presentation, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening, everybody. So I'm Suzanne Ward. I'm a place manager for the Environment Agency, and the geography I cover is West Midlands Combined Authority, Warwickshire and Worcestershire. So it's very significant patch, but by no means the whole of the area. So as an area within West Midlands, we cover Shropshire, Herefordshire, Gloucestershire, West Midlands Combined Authority, Warwickshire, Worcestershire and Staffordshire. So it's a fairly significant piece of geography. What I'm hoping to do today, and if I can get the tech to work, yeah. So what we want to do is just give you a bit of an overview of the priorities on the role of the Environment Agency, which is quite broad. Give you a little bit about structure, and the structure I'm really going to talk about is the one within the West Midlands, but I will just give you in context to the rest of the country and how you can contact us. Some information about water classification around Wychavon, and there is more detail in the questions that we responded to earlier. Then we'll just talk about some of the things that we do which are linked to water quality. So it's about regulation, things around how we deal with prolonged dry weather and incidents, invasive species, fish, flood risk management, and then we'll just give you a little bit of a summary of the sort of work that we've currently got going on in and around Wychavon. So hopefully you'll find that useful and interesting. So from this slide you'll see that we've got three key priorities if you look at the Environment Agency's corporate strategy. So it's creating a nation that's resilient to climate change, healthy air, water and land, and fostering green growth. So it won't surprise you that under climate change, we're now starting to see quite significant environmental pressures that are growing quite fast. We're seeing quite a lot of climate shocks, and we've got ageing infrastructure, unsustainable land management practices, and we are obviously depleting some of our non-renewable resources. So, and we've got population growth, which is also therefore giving quite a rise in demand, increased output of pollution, and all of this is putting an ever-increasing demand on our environment. So we're looking to use the best available sort of understanding of the risks that are going on, for example, flooding, dry weather and drought, and trying to see how we can maintain and enhance our flood work, water management assets, etc., and try and protect properties. In terms of the land, healthy land and air, we want the waters to get cleaner, we want the environmental outcomes to improve, and we trying, and one of the big things is to help in terms of industries operate far more cleaner where they are within our gift. And any of you know that not everything is actually permitted by the agency. Some are permitted by the local authorities, so it's where it is within our remit. And the other thing we're doing is trying to support economic growth. So we're trying to help resilience, provide advice and guidance, look at what flood risk elements we can do, see where we can do to try and prevent vital infrastructure, etc. And we're trying to use a lot of the science that sits behind it to help us understand and develop our thinking. So our role, not surprisingly, is regulating major industry and waste. We deal with treatment of contaminated land, water resources and water quality, so that's too much, too little. Fisheries, we also look at inland, estuary and harbour navigation, so in some places we're the navigation authority, and we also deal with conservation ecology, where it is aligned to the water and aquatic environment. I did say I'd talk about our structure. Thanks, Dave. So on here is a structure, that's our area structure, and that's our area management team. So you'll see in there, you've got me as one of the place managers, but you'll also see that we've got individual managers that look after different parts of the work that we do. So regulated industry, water, land and biodiversity, flood risk management, and then we've got other things like our strategy and business support. And we have two area directors, Mark Liddeth and Ian Jones. Mark Liddeth is the area director that covers this area. Ian Jones covers the other half of our patch. So he covers Staffordshire, West Midlands Combined Authority and Warwickshire, whereas Mark covers Shropshire, Herefordshire, Gloucestershire and Worcestershire. So, but in terms of the rest of us, although we're split under each of them, we actually tend in a lot of cases to cover the whole area. It's just for line management purposes we are actually split. But in context, the Environment Agency is an arm's length body of DEFRA, a government department. We have a board, and we also have a chief executive. We don't have elected officials like local authorities, so our governance doesn't run in the same way that you do. Our chief exec and our chair, when they go to scrutiny, go to parliamentary scrutiny committees. That's the way we operate. But in terms of management in area, you deal with, for day-to-day operations, it's through Mark, Ian and the team I'm part of. So hopefully that helps just try and understand where we sit and how we do. We've been asked just to let you know how you contact us. So we operate a 24-hour pollution incident line. That number is, anybody can call it, 24 hours, it's manned 24 hours. If it's a significant or big incident, we will actually respond out of hours. If it's a smaller or more minor incident, we will review and look and respond the next day. A response is not always a go out. A response may be that we assess and have a look. We may phone operators, we may phone to get further information. We also have a general inquiries email and telephone number. Again, if anybody wants to get any information or ask us anything, they're the best two ways to do that, because certainly they're manned and you will get a response from those email or telephone number. However, if you have got a more strategic issue that you want, then people can contact myself, and Councillor Homer and others here have got my details if required. So, water quality. So, I was asked for some stats and figures and various bits and pieces. So, Water Framework Directive, so 14% of England's rivers and are actually at good ecological status, which is not great. And we've got 0% at chemical status. And what we mean by that is biological it's like everything. It's one out, all out. So it may not be that every aspect of biological measures are bad, but if you lose one, you lose all of them. And the things we measure are invertebrates, macrophytes, which are aquatic plants, and phytobenthos, which is algae. But if any one of those are out, we also do physiochemicals, so the usual suspects, ammonia, dissolved oxygen, phosphate, temperature, and then we do various chemicals dependent on what's required. Chemical status, we tend to have a look at we do spot samples to have a look at that, and we measure those over time. And often we are looking to see whether there's anything technically feasible to remove those. Sometimes you tend to find that, particularly in some of the estuaries, you'll find that you've got a lot of heavy metals, and although they're no longer being discharged upstream, the sediment is constantly releasing them, so you get a certain level of constant levels. And then we also look at bathing waters, and bathing waters are at about 96% of good or excellent. And up until recently, there weren't many inland bathing waters. At the last round, there were 3 new bathing waters designated on the River Severn in Shropshire. And DEFRA are currently doing their next round, asking for possible nominations for bathing waters. What that means is they get increased monitoring to have a look what's going on, and then we also have a look at to try and respond to see what may be causing and if there are any problems in terms of reaching their excellent or good status. But I thought it might be quite useful. So this slide shows you the good ecological classifications for the water bodies in Wychavon. You will be not surprised that most of them are moderate. There is one little bit that is green, the rest is moderate or poor. So you've got 28 framework water body catchments, 27 rivers and 1 lake. You include, most of them, 20 of them are in the Avon, and 7 are in the River Severn, the Middle Worcestershire section of the River Severn. So,
sorry, Suzanne, can you just clarify where that green is then? Is it the lake, a river?
it's actually, the one good water body is Emily Castle. Yeah, so it's between the source to the confluence of the River Avon.
Elmley has its own water company, and therefore some of the village is on its own one that comes from the springs. So part of it is brilliant, but it's not totally brilliant.
We can come back to that, but sorry, thank you. I was just seeking clarity on that little patch of... so that's spring-fed waterway then, basically, essentially. It's, yeah. Okay.
And that could very well be, if you've got not a lot of other actual inputs, it does tend to make you, because at the end of the day, they are spot samples.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So the main failure, most widely failing element across Wychavon is phosphate. And that's failing in all but one water body. So, but you can get all of our data online, and again, in the response we sent you all the links to how you can get to all of that information, etc. So, but I thought it would be worth sharing with you. That is the long-term phosphate data for the Avon. And although it's still failing for phosphate, you can see that from the 1990s to today, there has been a sustained and reducing level of phosphate in the Avon.
Chairman, can I just ask, on your previous slide, sorry, I tried to get your attention, the charts there showing the FCEs says 2022. How often is that updated?
Properly, it's usually every 5 years. That's okay. So, but going back, so just so you're aware, that is our long-term trends. So we do monitor and look at the long-term trends that are happening within that. One of the questions that we often get is source apportionment. What we mean by that is, where are the sources of phosphate coming from? So the big blob on the left-hand, the big column on the left-hand side is the base. So that's when we started. And on that, you'll see that the biggest source apportionment at that time was, gosh, I'm looking at it here, I'm sorry, was sewage treatment plants. So the blue was where you were getting sewage treatment plants. The yellow is livestock and the green is arable. So you'll see that, because often we get asked, so what's causing the pollution, what's causing the issues in our rivers? Then you'll see the second one, which is the information that we had when we did the AMP7. So that's the asset management plans. So every 5 years, the water company, yes.
You have a breakdown.
Sorry. Questions have to come through the chair, and ideally, I was asking a point of clarity, so I'll allow questions, but just ideally, if we just go through these slides, and then if you just make a note of your question, we can come back to it, but it's just easier if we do it all as one.
I'm happy to come back, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
So, as I was saying, the water companies do 5-year investment cycles. They're called the asset management plans. So Asset Management Plan 7, or AMP7, was their 7th planning cycle, and that covered 2020 to 25. And when we were doing the work for that, you'll see what the apportionment's looking like that. So the apportionment to sewage treatment works had come down, but the livestock and arable had not changed. And then when you move across to when we've just done the AMP8, which is for 25 to 30, you'll see that again, the input from sewage treatment works has gone down again, but the apportionment for livestock and arable again is staying fairly static. But if you also look, the apportionment to different catchments or different bits, that what I've given you is the average. What you'll see then is from the little blobs on the graph, there are differences across Wychavon as to where the apportionment comes from. So one of the ways at the moment what we're doing is trying to regulate agriculture, and we inspect across the West Midlands around about 500 a year, which means we can't get everywhere all at the time. So in the Warwickshire Avon, we've done, during 2025, we did 9 inspections. 2 farms were compliant, but we found 7 that weren't. And therefore, we have to go in and give them notices to start doing things and asking them to make improvements. We also inspected 3 intensive farms. All of those had minor breaches. But what we are looking for, these are the sorts of things we start to look at when we're doing. So we look at whether they're doing soil testing and nutrient planning. We look at whether they have got anything in place to prevent soil loss and nutrient runoff, and whether they've got the appropriate silage infrastructure, and whether they actually have clean and dirty water separation. This time of year is particularly challenging when we also get a lot of land spreading, and when it's wet, like the conditions we've got now, we frequently have pollutions where silage and other materials are just literally run off into our watercourses.
Sorry, Suzanne, I'm breaking my own rules, but you said 500 at the beginning of that slide.
That's,
Do you mean
that's for the whole of the West Midlands.
So that's 500 inspections on farms?
Yeah, a year.
Right, okay, thank you.
So, water industry regulation. Now, we have seen a significant increase in investment through the government, and we've now employed 46 new staff across 5 teams in the West Midlands. So our ambition is to do 2,000 water company inspections over the 26-27. In the last 12 months, we've carried out 19 water company inspections in Wychavon, in the Droitwich and Evesham area, and we've identified 10 breaches, and 6 of those have resulted in us issuing enforcement action against the water company. Some might be minor, which they can put right straight away, so it doesn't require us then to actually do anything further. And often we deal with it through advice and guidance. But if it requires more, then we do take further enforcement action. We've also got new storm overflow discharge reduction plans that are setting out new stringent targets for water companies, and particularly for overflows that are causing the most harm. So what we are doing is prioritising those that which are causing, on the information and the evidence we have, are causing the worst problems, and we're going for those first. And between June 24 and May 25, we did 110 inspections of those, and we found 28 breaches of permit. So again, the more we look, the more we're finding breaches and issues that we're having to deal with. Prolonged dry weather or drought. It won't have missed you all that it was very dry last year. And I just thought it'd be worth giving you some key facts from last year, because one of our roles is to monitor water resource availability. So as of the end of January, the storage in England's reservoirs was still 2% below the average for that time of year, even though we've had that much rain and water. But we do have time for to recover, because we always look for reservoirs to be full already by the end of March before we go into the next season. But some of the key facts from last year are that it was the driest spring since 1893. It was the hottest summer on record for June, July and August, and we saw an average temperature of 17.42 degrees, which is about 1.69 degrees above average that we've seen long term. It was the driest February to August on record across the Midlands, and 15 key reservoirs were at below 50% by the end of September across the country. And it was a busy year for us. We granted 46 drought permits, 2 drought orders, and 9 million people were subject to temporary use bans. What we mean by that is hosepipe bans in layman's terms. And we regulated the River Severn for 86 days starting on the 9th of May. What we have to do is we are required to keep the mean flow at Bewdley at 750 megalitres a day. And we do that by asking Severn Trent to reduce releases from Clwegog or reservoir. And what we have to do in the dry weather, it can take about 4 or 5 days for that water to reach Bewdley. So it takes a lot of us measuring and making assessments, understanding what the water companies need to take out for public water supply for us to maintain that level, but not waste water. It's a big effort and takes a lot of time. And we also brought in the Shropshire Groundwater Scheme, which is where we pump groundwater to help also augment the River Severn to allow that to happen. We also do instant response, and we do a lot of instant response, and we've done some of the key ones for your patch are that there was a big fish kill, I don't know if you remember, on the Lawnbrook around 2017 where about 500 fish were killed, and the fines imposed for that one were £90,000 when we did that. But that wasn't heard until 2024 because we had a few things. It takes us sometimes a long time to get into court, and a lot of it is not due to us, it's due to the backlogs within the court system. If we go to magistrates' court, it's a bit easier, but it's not as easy if we go...
Sorry, Suzanne, can I just ask quickly then, what was the source of the pollution?
Trade effluent.
Trade effluent.
It was trade effluent discharge. So we do that. So as I say, we do respond. So in incident response, that means a fish kill, water quality pollution. It also means flood risk and anything associated with that. We've also been doing some work in the area on non-invasive, non-native species. So, and if anybody knows what we're talking about there, are things like floating pennywort. We've done quite a bit there, and we moved with the help of Canals and Rivers Trust. We moved quite a lot from around Diglas in Worcester. Interesting enough, riparian owners, these are the people who actually own the river. So if you own land either side of a river, you own the river up to the middle of the middle of the river. So you own that river up to there, and so you can have two riparian owners on either side of a river bank. They are not obliged to remove floating pennywort or any other invasive species, but they do have a duty to take reasonable actions to ensure it doesn't cause problems to neighbouring properties.
So I'm going to ask another point of clarity. So when you say that you can have two owners of the river, you're talking about the water course. You're not talking about the river bed, are you?
Yeah, talking about
the river. So they own the river bed as well and banks.
Yeah. There's a misconception that the Environment Agency own rivers.
No, I don't have that misconception.
No,
I know that.
No, the owner. So they own the fishing rights. They own all of that. Yeah. But we have, and I'm not sure whether you've got some of the members here, but there is actually a floating pennywort catchment action group that we're working with, and they're working with some of our officers. The grouping also consists of the Angling Trust, Canals and Rivers Trust, Paddle UK, trying to help eradicate and remove floating pennywort from the Avon. So again, quite a bit going on trying to help eradicate some of these. The other thing that we've got is the River Severn, and we have seen quite a drop in both salmon and eels on the River Severn, and so there are restrictions on the Severn, and we do have officers who do patrols of the Severn, and they do those out of hours and at night, and they do have powers of arrest, and we will do that with the police. Our fishery officers also try to look at habitat restoration. So where we can, through things like unlocking the Severn, we try to work with partners to remove barriers that are stopping fish and eels moving up the rivers. And I'm now going to, that's the environment side done. I'm now going to hand over to Dave to talk about flood risk.
Thanks, Suzanne. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Dave Edwards. I'm the PSO team leader, that's Partnership and Strategic Overview, also known as Flood Risk Management team leader. My team covers Shropshire and Worcestershire. So there's a number of elements to our flood risk management functions at the Environment Agency, which my team leads on. So firstly, our regulatory functions, they're twofold in that we are a statutory consultee for the planning process. So local planning authorities, such as Wychavon, consult us on relevant planning applications from a flood risk perspective, and we look at those and provide our advice. And then the planning officer takes that into account as part of the decision-making process for planning applications. You can normally see our comments on the public-facing website of the local planning authority if you're interested. We also do flood risk activity permits. Now, this is sort of in parallel to the planning process, if you like. It's if individuals or organisations want to do work on or near a main river, then they require our permission to do so in the form of a flood risk activity permit. And again, we look at those to ensure that what's being proposed won't harm the environment and won't increase flood risk to third parties. So yeah, those are our two main regulatory functions. The main aim of both of those, as I say, is to ensure there's no harm to the environment and flood risk is adequately managed in terms of affecting third parties. They both link into the strategic goal of supporting sustainable development as well. So our other function, probably which carries the largest amount of work for my team, is in trying to reduce the risk of flooding to our communities across the patch. So for my team, that's the development and delivery of new flood risk management schemes. For example, we've got a photo on there of the Badsey Brook flood risk management scheme at Broadway. We use a whole host of information from different sources to develop and prioritise areas for development of flood risk management, where we've got larger sort of clusters of properties that are at risk, like there were in this area on screen. It means that larger, sort of more traditional, if you like, flood risk management schemes are more cost beneficial to deliver. When we're considering schemes, we have to ensure that in doing so, it's good value for the taxpayer and UK PLC. So we look at the cost of delivering a project versus the benefit that its delivery will bring. The benefit has to outweigh the cost in order for us to be able to spend government funding. As well as government funding now, we also look to work in partnership with other organisations and try and lever in funding from other sources as well. Suzanne mentioned, for example, about water company expenditure on storm overflows in the future. That's an area of expenditure that's going to increase quite significantly from what we understand. And the measures that water companies will be taking to reduce storm overflow are likely to involve reducing the amount of surface water that enters the combined sewers, and the measures that they take to do that can also help reduce flood risk to properties as well. And so there's partnership opportunities that we can jointly deliver projects that will deliver outcomes for both organisations, but more importantly for those communities. Where we have properties that aren't necessarily in clusters, are further apart, or individual properties, and obviously this being a rural patch along with Shropshire, the two counties that I cover, we have a lot of individual properties dotted around where a larger engineering traditional scheme, if you like, isn't necessarily the most cost-effective way forward. We're able to look at individual property level resilience measures, and we're doing that right across the patch. There's quite a large number of properties dotted across Shropshire and Worcestershire, and within Wychavon, where we will be looking to deliver property flood resilience measures in the near future. Not within my team, but the other risk management element of work that we do for flood risk is looking after our existing flood risk management assets. So the Badsey Brook scheme again, and and the defences here in Pershore, we have a scheme, a schedule of work and inspections to ensure that those remain fit for purpose. For example, every time they're operational, they are inspected by an engineer to make sure that they will be fit for operation the next time. And again, building on what Suzanne said about about incident response, a large part of our, well, there's two halves to our incident response. We have the environmental side and then the flood risk side. At the moment, we're doing a lot of work on the flood risk side with not many dry days in recent memory, it seems. Although the levels on our rivers haven't been too high to create widespread flooding impacts, they've certainly stayed topped up and are higher than normal, which means that our flood warners, who are on duty 24/7, are very busy. I'm sure some of you will be aware of all of the flood warnings and flood alerts that have been going out to communities. The map there on the slide is just an example. I think I took the screenshot from our national warning map the day before yesterday, which just shows how many flood alerts and warnings there are across the country currently. So we're warning and informing the public through our warning service. When the levels get to the sufficiently high, then we are deploying our assets. Some assets don't need deploying. Flood storage areas, for example, they fill up on their own. Other areas, the flood defences in Bewdley, which I'm sure you'll have seen on the news over the years, Shrewsbury, they need people on the ground to actually put them up. We have other assets across the patch where we close floodgates, and we also use quite a lot of flood embankments as well. And our teams are out there as well, checking for blockages, checking the debris screens to make sure that they're clear, and all of our sort of well-known pinch points, if you like, are working to the best of their ability.
So the last thing you asked was what work were we doing in Wychavon. So that's just a little bit of a summary of where we are working, the sorts of things we're currently doing in and around Wychavon and the groups we're working in. So a lot of stuff we do is in partnership. We don't just do it on our own. The ones that we do on our own, obviously, are the regulatory activities, which are water company inspections and farm inspections. But others, we work with partners to deliver things. So that was just an example of the stuff that we're doing in and around. So, questions now?
Thanks, Suzanne. And
Oh, sorry.
thank you very much. So a number of people submitted questions. So committee members submitted questions. We've had a meeting just before this just to go through those. There are a few people that would like to come back on some of those questions. As I reiterated to them, and I just did at the start of the meeting, we understand that you might not be able to give all the detail, but you know, if you can come back with the detail or more further detail, we would appreciate that. So I'll start with the committee members. We will then make sure that those people at the back that have come and attended this evening, and that we're grateful for you being here, that you get the opportunity to also ask questions, and I'll bring you in at the right time. So if I start with the committee, and Julie, do you want to start?
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation, and I'm sort of assuming that we will all get a copy of that with the minutes, so which would be useful. Thank you. I asked a few questions, actually, one of which was about how often testing was taking place in the River Avon around Evesham and Pershore. And the response was that it happens at varying intervals. And you also sent two charts showing freshwater river monitoring points on the River Avon and sites monitored for ecological elements on the River Avon. I noticed that quite a lot of the dates of last sample were quite a long time ago. So I'm wondering how, for example, around Evesham, the ecological elements were tested, it says on the last time was 2014. But then your report also that you sent says that the invertebrates section of your classification was good, but given that that happened in 2014, I'm not sure how you can still say that it's good. So I wondered if you could sort of clarify that to me a little bit more, please.
We'll come back to you on that because I don't have all of that detail in
absolutely.
my
Yeah,
head.
that's
so
fine.
I'll find out. So it's at Evesham.
Yeah, and as I say, around going towards the Pershore area as well.
I think for those more technically in detail questions, I'm sure Julie would supply a further sort of subsidiary question to her so that she can go back and we can make sure that's fed back to you then.
I'm very happy
So don't
with
worry
that.
about trying to remember everything.
No, that's fine. And all of this information, I think we did include a link. You can go on and actually look at all beyond what we've provided in the tables and go further.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'm quite happy to
Thank
wait.
you.
I just need to sort of have that clarified a little bit. Thank you. And the other question that I wanted to follow up a little bit was I asked what advice does the Environment Agency give on natural flood management, as we know that this can aid considerably in reducing flood risk whilst helping to retain water in the soil when drought occurs. And in your response, you said that you've got significant experience when it comes to the benefits of installation of natural flood management. I wondered if you could give us some examples, please.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So we have been working with. Well, I'll take a step back. Our sort of delivery frameworks are geared up more for delivery of traditional flood risk management work, which doesn't necessarily align with the delivery of natural flood management. But, and this is a very big but, we still do a lot of natural flood management, but we do it through partnership working, typically with local authorities. So, for example, with both Shropshire Council and Worcestershire County Council, for a number of years now, Shropshire Council, probably well over 10 years now, we've been funding natural flood management at catchment scale. So we enter into a partnership agreement really with the local authority that's able to then work typically with wildlife trusts and rivers trusts, and then those organisations work with individual landowners to install natural flood management measures. A great example is the River Corve in Shropshire, which is a tributary of the River Team, just upstream of Ludlow. They've been working for a number of years on delivering natural flood management measures there, ranging from leaky, woody, debris barriers, runoff storage areas. They've done ground aeration to increase infiltration, tree planting, a whole host of measures. With Worcestershire County Council, we are working on natural flood management upstream of Tenbury Wells on the Keir Brook, and that's using Seven Rivers Trust. That's on the ground now, and that's being widened out to include even more parts of the Team catchment upstream in Shropshire. Offhand, I'm not sure if we're doing any NFM in the Wychavon area. I will find that out and come back to the committee on that. But if we're not, I think it probably is. It's likely that we will be doing so in the future. The new funding rules for flood risk management, which come in April, are going to put NFM on a higher footing and prioritise it. So it's a good time for NFM.
And I think perhaps as a bit of a feedback, Wildlife Trust and ourselves and partners in Shipstone Star have done quite a bit of NFM work, and we have had feedback that when we've had recent heavy weather last year and early this year, the peak has not been anywhere near as high, and they believe without it they would have flooded in when they didn't. So although it's really hard to measure the effectiveness anecdotally from what we're getting from communities where it has been installed, it appears to be having very good benefits.
And I think the other benefit is it's quite a lot cheaper as well, I'm sure.
The issue often is getting the multiple landowners to maintain it.
Yeah.
Vic, you wanted to come in?
I think at one point some work was being carried out on the River Isbourne. It might be in Gloucestershire, but that does benefit Wychavon, Sedgeborough and parts of Evesham as the Isbourne comes through Sedgeborough and joins the Avon at Evesham. So I think that does benefit Wychavon, even though technically it might be just over the border.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. My question's been answered, but it's literally about the slowing the flow, actually, upstream of these natural sort of flood barriers, actually, which are really important, aren't they?
Yes, and moving forward, there are all the sorts of things that working with DEFRA and other partners is looking at, because it has to be, the benefits come from doing it at the catchment level, and getting and bringing partners in, and certainly I think DEFRA are going out again looking at another catchment scale, but you need, when they talk about it, you need 500 hectares worth of land for it to be at a catchment scale for DEFRA to think about as part of their work. But we do it at other scales, but we are looking at having catchment, understanding the catchments, and therefore where things with partners it might be beneficial.
Councillor Crum, Day and Ward.
First question is based on the slides that you were showing. You're talking about bathing water. 96% of England is classed as good or excellent. What areas are you classing as bathing water? Is it sort of like lakes and...
Bathing waters are a statutory designation by DEFRA. So up until recently, they were just around the coast, so they were your usuals, they were your holiday hotspots, they were the beaches. More recently, DEFRA have now started designating inland bathing waters. So they are very specific areas that are designated. So as I said, last designation, 3 areas on the 7 in Shropshire were designated as bathing waters. And DEFRA are currently asking for any additional places that they would like considered for bathing water designation. But not every water is designated as bathing water.
Thank you. The other thing, with Severn Trent, they have their sewage maps, and obviously they've been quite active over the last few days, should I say. When they get major spillages in areas, for example, there's one in Cropthorne that I saw a couple of days ago that's been going on for 86 hours and that sort of thing. How do they become accountable? Can you make them accountable for this? And are you able to, sort of, because this is obviously one area that is huge, and how can you and we sort of try and get some more control over this?
Right. First things, if you see it phone it in on our pollution hotline. I mean, that's the first thing that you can do. Our new water industry teams, what they do is now they're looking at this information about spills and how long it's gone on, and they look at it linked to the permit. So to see whether it's actually discharging within permit. So Dave talked about earlier, at the moment where you've got things like combined sewer overflows, where they take both surface water, so when it rains and everything else, obviously if you have some of the deluges we've had, those systems literally get overwhelmed and they will discharge, and the permits allow them to discharge. Because if they don't discharge, they back up in people's houses. It's a one or the other situation. However, what's caused a lot of the concern and issues is that a lot of these discharges have actually been discharging when it's completely dry. So there is no justification at all for them to discharge, and they are in breach of their permit. And when there's a lot of water about, if at the moment why it's very heavy, if it discharges and it's discharging within permit, the reason being as well is that its impact is going to be a lot less because it's very, very diluted in comparison to, obviously, if you're in dry period and you've got low flows and you have a discharge, then the impact is going to be very, very significant. So what we look at is what the data is telling us. We may very well go to the site and have a look at it. We will ask to see Severn Trent's records about their maintenance, what else they're doing, and we will look at their permit conditions. And depending on what we find when we've investigated, we'll determine what action we then take. I hope that helps. And in some cases, it may be all the way through to prosecution.
Councillor Day.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested to look at your phosphate graph. What's the target from your point of view? I mean, what are you hoping to get to? Because from what you showed, obviously we've seen sewage treatment has reduced it, but agriculture, for example, has remained a pretty stubborn component. So is there a plan for each of those elements to bring it down? Who owns the plan and what's the end target?
Apologies. Under the catchment plans, where we're looking at what is the attributing factor, is then deciding. So where we're going out to farms, obviously if we believe it's major contributors are farms, that's when we will do our farm visits and we're asking them to take up the steps. So like the things I talked about, so prevent soil, making sure the way they are actually using their fertilisers and all the things that they're doing. Obviously, we're still working with water companies and they're still expected to bring down those levels. And as per the previous question, if they are discharging outside of permit levels, they can obviously be increasing those phosphate levels. But there is actually an environmental quality standard for rivers of phosphate. I can't tell you what it is off the top of my head, but we can get that to you if you would like to know that. But yes, so there is, we are planned, and the other one obviously, so what we're doing is working through those. Most of you will have heard of things like the Y, where there's a lot of scrutiny on what's happening because of the most of the things there are caused by farming and other things. So that's what we're doing. So we're working, and some of it will be catchment. So some of it obviously links in with Natural England. Some of it will link in with Wildlife Trust because they do some support. So actually, we're working on catchment plans to work through, but we're looking at where the biggest sources can be and what we can do to actually tackle them. But some of them are going to be really difficult. Some of it is not going to be that easy for us to tackle, and that's why, in fairness, we've probably hit the easiest or the low-hanging fruit with some of the things we've hit with the water companies. The others are far harder for us to tackle because they're often what we call diffuse. A point source is really easy. You find a pipe, you can track it upstream. When it's coming from lots of different sources, and sometimes, you know, farms have incidents and it can be just slowly percolating. It could have gone into the groundwater and percolating, and trying to understand what that is really difficult. But the plans are, we go to the farms, we have a look at their current farming practices, what they're doing and what they need to do to change.
So on that On that then, I mean, do you think the farms need more incentives in the way that they did have from the EU previously? You know, we were supposed to be carrying those forward, and I think they've been in abeyance for some months, and they're going to come back in again. But you know, the whole drive towards
Can't
regenerative.
speak for what DEFRA are going to bring in, I'm afraid.
Okay. All right, then the question for Dave. You mentioned that there's a kind of a cost-benefit analysis that's done on flooding, and you want to make sure that the benefits exceed the costs. What's the timeline that you look for the benefits over? Are you expecting payback within 1 year, or have you got a formula that defines what a good payback looks like, or a good CBA looks like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the benefits are calculated using government's Green Book. So it's a standard calculation that's used for any sort of public expenditure, if you like. The duration of the benefits is the duration of the scheme. So typically for a built engineered scheme like the Badsey Brook one, for example, would be between 50 and 100 years, depending on the specifics. So the benefits would be calculated over the lifetime of the scheme. In a similar vein, the cost of the scheme would be the lifetime cost. So design, construction and maintenance of the scheme over its lifetime. And in order to be able to spend government grant and aid, the benefits have to outweigh the cost.
Can I ask my question because it relates to what we're just talking about?
I've got one more question from a councillor, and then I'll come to you to ask your question. Don't worry, you'll get to, it doesn't matter about the sequence. Yeah, and I've got committee members that need to ask the questions first. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. I'm particularly interested in the bathing waters, especially as you say they're starting to increase in terms of inland sites. Have you found a lot of the bathing water areas help local environments? I believe I've seen a bathing water site in Evesham where it's quite naturally maintained. So I'm guessing if it's clean water, especially if it's coming off rivers that aren't as clean, they must have some sort of self-filtering element. And on top of that, if there is a benefit to them, to the local environment, is there support coming out of either yourselves or DEFRA for increased inland bathing waters?
Right. It's fair to say that the 3 new inland bathing waters in Shropshire don't meet the standard. So just because something has been designated doesn't necessarily mean it'll. What it does mean is first of all we increase our monitoring. So we do far more monitoring to understand what's going on, and what we then do is we respond quicker to pollution incidents around that. So we're constantly looking for what's causing it, and we're looking to find why it's not reaching the required standard. So more effort is put in to try and understand why it's not meeting the required standard and what we can do about it. What we have done though, because that can take time, it's not something that easily can get fixed. But what we have done is one of our colleagues has developed an app, a phone app, and it's an app, and we've put some sensors into the river. And what the individuals can do is they can on any one day have a look what those sensors are saying about the markers that we've used to tell them what the quality of the river is on that day, and they can make an informed decision of whether they choose to bathe or not bathe on that particular day. But it doesn't necessarily mean that things are better, but I would say that anything that may bring people into a place is going to have economic value to that location. And obviously we are working and we're monitoring it more, so we understand more what might be causing issues, and therefore can go and look for them. Hope that helps sort of answers your question.
It does, with one additional as well. Do you ever find that these inland bathing waters, if they're being sort of more monitored and more explored. And I'm guessing if there's any extra digging out around them to increase their bathability. Do you ever find that they're used also as a flood protection, sort of as an additional area for water pooling in those flooding times?
We don't make any changes to the actual river itself, so there's not, we don't make any changes to the banks for ingress or egress. That's not, if a landowner wishes to do that, they go for a permit, as Dave said, around that. So when DEFRA designate it, we make no changes are made to the river whatsoever.
I think it's more if you've seen those changes in those areas that become inland bathing waters. Like, does it tend to bring additional benefits to that area as to before it was designated a bathing area or bathing waters area?
We haven't got many, and these three were only designated in 2024, so we really haven't got much evidence. So I can't really answer that question at the moment.
Okay. All right. So I have got a couple of questions, but I will hold off and allow our members of the public that are here to ask those questions. So I think is it Mrs. Smith, is that right? Yeah, Kerry, if you want to ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just talk about the Badsey Brook piece that you put up there? I live in Charles Wycombe. It's the first village after that bund, and it is the first village after the Broadway sewage update that we've done, £10 million. Charles Wycombe is still experiencing high levels of sewage in that stream, and I'm wondering how you're going to assess that in light of that investment. If the benefits have to be felt within 50 to 100 years, and we are 3 years in, and we're still not having any benefits from it, how do you then assess that, please?
I'm not sure whether you're mixing two things up. So the scheme that Dave talked about is just a flood storage scheme. It's not to improve the water quality in the brook. The other would be a Severn Trent water investment scheme. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, we've had both, and I believe that you talked about the Badsey Brook having less incidents of water causing a spillage for a CSO. So we are still having the CSO spill those raw sewage. So the two are connected in a specific way.
Yeah, so the flood risk scheme, the Badsey Brook flood risk management scheme, is to reduce flood risk from the Badsey Brook. So that's water that comes down the brook from the catchment above is essentially captured and held temporarily back in the storage area we saw, that you know.
Yeah.
And this is one of the complexities of flood risk management. So that's one area of flood risk that's being managed and reduced as a result of that investment that was put in. Then the water that causes the sewer overflows to operate, that's from the rain that falls on Broadway, or excuse me if it isn't Broadway, but that local catchment itself, that's falling on the ground there, probably going through highway gullies and finding its way into the combined sewer system. That local water, if you like, isn't managed by the Badsey Brook flood risk management scheme. That's will be managed as part of Severn Trent Water's investment. You said a £10 million.
Yeah, they've invested recently in the sewage works just outside Broadway. So we're left in Charles Wycombe with investment for the flooding and investment for the sewage, and yet we have, despite all of that investment, we are still having sewage in our stream. And I am wondering how, therefore, we evaluate the value of all of that investment.
Severn Trent, as I mentioned, the water companies do 5-year investment programmes. So the investment in the sewage works would have been part of one of the previous investment programmes. What I don't know is whether the CSOs in your area are part of their next investment programmes, because they're different infrastructures, and it's how Severn Trent do their investment into their infrastructure and when they bring it in. Now, there is a big focus on CSOs, but I can't tell you whether it's part of this next 2025 to 2030 investment for Severn Trent in this area.
So I can come in on that
it
point.
It isn't.
So Severn Trent have recently come to this committee and updated us, and I think they're about to release their new investment, their 5-year investments that they were going to be making. That may have come out in the meantime. Severn Trent will return to this committee in the next sort of 12 to 18 months as well, so there's an opportunity to come and speak to Severn Trent particularly. I think probably what we're addressing is there's 2 separate issues here that can't be addressed. You can't speak for Severn Trent can't speak for you, but you can work together on the solution.
What we would be doing is making sure that the CSOs are not discharging outside of their permit conditions, which is our responsibility, but the upgrading of their infrastructure is Severn Trent's.
Yeah.
So can I ask a follow-on question for that then? The part of the responsibility for you to assess those spills, I believe, sits within a storm overflow assessment framework. And I believe if we look at the statistics within Charles Wycombe for that overflow framework, we are about to evoke the measures that have been laid out in that framework as to what good looks like. And we will get to April 26 and we will have exceeded what good looks like as far as that framework is concerned. How would a village like Charles Wycombe engage with somebody to actually evoke that framework and get that investigated?
You can contact us, but I think we've already got a question in from you.
I suspect so, yeah.
Because I've seen the names, you said Charles Wycombe, so I think we're already going to be responding to that anyway.
Okay.
For a request into us. Our water industry team look at all those, anything like that, and then they prioritise our investigation and our investigation resource in what needs to happen. So they do it on a priority basis then once that information's done. So you would, in terms of if it triggers, you wouldn't need to do it because we would already have picked it up. What I can't tell you is what our next actions would be.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Louise or anyone else from... I always call you Action River Vale Group. I think Action River, I think Action River just sounds a bit more sort of like Superman-y, but you guys are still doing great work. So it's Avon Vale Action River Group. Yeah. No?
Avon Vale River
Action Group, that's it. So, ARAG. So we've got a couple of questions from these guys as well, if that's okay.
So just as an overview, there are at least 3 citizen science groups collecting weekly or monthly chemical data and starting to look at ecological data as well across this catchment. We've been doing work for 3 years and capturing that data. I would say from a positive perspective that the EA have finally started engaging with us, which is great, and hopefully we'll be able to work with them, especially as part of the catchment group, to help start looking at bringing all of that data across those citizen science groups and starting to interpret it. I think it's a shame you didn't mention more about citizen science groups, because I don't think you can do your job without us anymore, because you obviously aren't monitoring to the extent that you have been in the past, and I don't think in the future, with changes that are coming with the water reform white paper, that you will, obviously there's going to be massive changes across the industry in terms of the Environment Agency and Ofwat, etc. So I think the reliance on groups like ours that are all unfunded and run by volunteers will be critical. I think the thing that the negative experience that I can report is that whenever we raise a local issue with the EA, we wait a long time to get almost never a response. And we get quite frustrated by it, and we don't understand how a 5-year investment cycle with very little data to back it up can address some of the local issues that we're finding by monitoring regularly. So I'm going to pass over to one of my colleagues, because what we're finding is that a lot of the problem areas are due to potentially some treatment plants that don't even have permits, but are dealing with a huge amount of, they might have a permit but no phosphate and nitrate limits on them, which, as phosphate is one of the biggest issues, having permits that exclude that as a measure is obviously an issue, and we're finding very high phosphate levels in all of the testing that we're coming across. So we're kind of a bit of a, we've collected 3 years worth of data. We're now identifying local issues, and we're not sure how we engage with you to try and address some of these issues. And I think it's great looking at the water catchment groups and the engagement we're getting on that level, but actually looking at specific problems, and my colleague will explain one of the specific problems so that you can see the type of thing we're trying to do locally to action.
Yeah. Hello, my name's Catherine. I'm a resident in Cropthorne, and I got involved with the River Action Group through the Parish Council within Cropthorne. Councillor Crump already mentioned that the Cropthorne site is being recognised as having high output in terms of spillages, but we've also recognised that it doesn't have a phosphate permit or an ammonia permit on there. So, I mean, a question firstly is, how many sites are there on the River Avon that don't have a phosphate and ammonia permit? Because obviously that is a way that you hold the sewage company to account in terms of what they are discharging. If they don't have a permit, how do you hold them to account? I took a sample from the river very, very close to where the discharge point was back in November. It was a period of very dry weather. We'd had no significant rainfall that week, and it maxed out my phosphate meter, and it was a 0.65 on ammonia. So it's a problem. So how can we address it?
Right, so first and foremost, I think do you know Lydia from the Environment Agency? Yes. Yeah, so Lydia and a lady called Nicola Edgar are trying to bring those things together. The agency is just starting to pull together how it can better use citizen science data, and we've now set up a website, and we're starting to look at how we can better use all of that. And I had spoken to Lydia, contacted Lydia beforehand, and she said she's going to come back to you and work with you more on how we can do that in terms of getting the data. In terms of if you actually pick something up literally when you're there, you phone our pollution hotline, you phone our 0800 number. Now, what I can say is we won't always turn up. We can't. We don't have enough. The reality is we don't have enough staff to come out and permanently turn up at every instant. So we do an assessment when we get them and start to understand. Now, sometimes our assessments might be if we have multiple in a particular area, that ups the priority for us, and then we'll look at what our next step will be in terms of that. In terms, there are different types of permits, you're absolutely right. CSOs and a lot of those type of ones don't actually have any particular limits on them, because in reality they are only ever supposed to discharge in emergency circumstances. So in reality we don't want them discharging, we don't want them putting anything in, and if it's an emergency situation because it's to prevent flooding in properties and houses, you can't, it's very difficult legally to hold a company to account, because which do you do? Let people's properties flood with sewage or let it go into the river? That's why we have different types of permits and why they will have that. One of the things that the new investment that we've had from the government is we are looking at, there is a big investigation going on nationally looking at what's happening in terms of storm overflows and all of that. Can't say anything more than that because it is an ongoing, they are ongoing live investigations, but some water companies have already, things are already moving forward with some water companies. Anything else we're also taking forward. So where we do find it and those things, what I will say is if you start water company overflows now, we are attending those even if they are what we would have called a lower incident. So we classify incidents 1 to 4. So 1 is a major incident, 2 is significant, 3 we class as having a minor environmental impact, and 4 as having no impact at all. Until recently, we would not attend Cat 3s because we just didn't have the resource. What we are now doing, if it is associated with a water company infrastructure, we will attend Cat 3s. We won't attend it if it's not associated with a water company infrastructure because we don't have the money to do that. So it's really important that if you report it, you tell us it's coming from a water company infrastructure, because that means how we will prioritise our attendance at it. So I know I can't give you all the answers you want, but hopefully it's an improving picture. It's not where we want it to be yet, but we have definitely stepped up what we are doing.
Can I just ask a question about investment and the Water Directive framework? So if we find that, for example, that same sewage treatment plant, there is more pressure going to be on that because of ongoing planning applications, that is no longer going to be, basically fit for purpose. Is there any way that you can change the investment programme that a water company has in place? Because every 5 years, especially in an area where you know that there's, for example, this one where there's no, phosphate and nitrate limits, and there's, an admission in the documentation that they're going to be fit for purpose if there's more building.
We can't, but I think as somebody alluded to, we've had the Conliffe report. So we do know that there are going to be changes to the way the water companies are regulated in the future in terms of bringing, because up until now, water company investment is what Ofwat do. What we do is we provide them with where we believe investment is required for environmental improvement, but all the other things, it falls under the Ofwat banner. Those are going to come together following the Conliffe report. What that looks like, none of us know. That's still with government at the moment. Whether they then choose to change the framework, the planning framework and the investment framework as part of that review, I don't know. But at the moment, it's set in statute, the current planning round.
Suzanne, can I just ask then, if they did a monitoring by the waterworks and it was maxed out phosphate, what kind of category incident would that be classified as?
There are 2 things you have to check. Is it actually the direct depth? You can get by a water course, but you could also have phosphate coming down from upstream, which then mixes, which means it maxes it out. So to do it, I report it in, tell them, if you've actually managed to monitor the actual discharge point and it's maxed out, then that might be quite useful. But as you can see, what I'm saying is it can be difficult. If it's just the water, it may be that, and we often find that we turn up somewhere and then find actually it has nothing to do with that discharge point, it's further upstream. But tell us what you've got, what information you've got, and then our officers can do the assessment and attend.
So firstly, the question on our phosphate meters is that at the moment we're using the ones that are a maximum 2.5 parts per million. Is that sufficient for the information that you require, or should we look at investing into one of the higher level meters?
I'm not an expert on that. I'll have to come back. I'll get somebody to come back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. And then just on the agricultural and farming side of things, so it's my understanding, particularly in this locality, that actually a lot of phosphate pollution would be as a result of soil erosion, which is quite a low level thing in this area because we don't have a lot of hills. River Wye, very different story. So how are you identifying the farms that you're inspecting? Is it where you are just already suspecting a problem, you have local pollution that you're investigating, or is it a random, we'll go there?
It can be a mixture of intelligence. I mean, more and more we're using things like, we have things like LiDAR data, so actually we get information there, we can have a look where we've got photographs of the land, and therefore we can use that as to help us. We can also use drone footage now, and so we're starting to use a different range. So we're moving away from the traditional, we'll just go and take dip samples to understand what's going on and where issues might be. We're now starting to try and use other types of technology to help us pinpoint where we can best target our resources.
I've got a few questions, and I feel like we're going to have to wrap it up. So, just one. Could I just ask? So, when you see these incidents, whether it's high phosphate, I guess you always report it into the EA.
Generally, we do. So we have an app on our phones that we report all of our monitoring data into. So that is all collated into the Angling Trust Water Quality Monitoring Network. Yeah. If I'm being perfectly honest, we've given up reporting it into the EA every time we find something, because we found that it's fallen on deaf ears, and we've waited for responses and we haven't had those.
So just very similarly to a piece of work I've been doing with the police recently is, and I'm guilty of this, I've seen criminal activity and I've not reported it because I thought, well, the police aren't going to do anything. And very rightly so, the police come back to me and go, well, how would you want us to know about it? We can't do anything we don't know about. And it's not a criticism of you. You guys are taking a very proactive stance on trying to help solve this problem. But please just become a nuisance, because that's what we have to do. We have to become a thorn in the side, and we need intelligence. And that's what we're missing on is, it's not this. Sometimes it's not always about, I don't know whether it's a crime or it's an incident, what it is. Just report it and let those people then that can monitor and evaluate make those assumptions. But it sounds like, you've identified something that people would want to be alerted to, so continue to do that. Thank you for everything that you do on that perspective.
I think we can promise you that the people of Charles Wycombe will continue to do that regularly. I'm really sorry, guys, you might hear from us a bit more.
No, that's absolutely fine, and we have had recent instances where we've only had the odd one or two call, and then eventually we've had a few more things that have come in, and when we've gone out, we've opened a criminal investigation. So sometimes it helps because actually we get a better picture of what is going on.
I'll send my questions because you guys need to get back to Stafford or something, and I think we've exhausted that. But what it does show is the level of interest in your work. I really appreciate the way that you've come and been as open as you possibly can. You guys are representing a government organisation at the end of the day. Unfortunately, you won't have the levers of power that we hope you would have, but hopefully you can carry forward the messages. But I think that the response of the fact that citizen science is being so proactive, that it is scientific and it is data that could be used to help better inform decisions that are being made with using that volunteer workforce, which is so we need that volunteer workforce. I think is a really if you could carry that message home, then we'd be really grateful.
No, and there is, on some of the answers I put through, there is DEFRA are doing a whole host of things about ecology and the ecological understanding. So there is a lot more work being done through DEFRA and with the Environment Agency. So we are trying to move it forward. Sometimes the wheels can be a little bit slow, but we are getting there.
So thank you very much. You're free to go. And anyone else that was associated with the EA is free to go as well, so don't feel you need to stay. And we will move on then to item 6, which is the We Are Wychavon Q3 Performance Report. We've had a couple of questions in from champions. That most significantly was Councillor Crump. So you had some questions. You've had responses to those questions. Was there anything you wanted to come back on or ask anything further on?
Sorry, I haven't had responses to the questions, but that is because they were submitted late to Sherry as well, so it's my fault too.
Do you want to... Have you got a response to the question?
I can deal with one of them, and we will come back to you on the others. So the resident survey you asked about, actually I haven't got a proper answer to part of your question. You asked what proportion of Wychavon residents responded, and I haven't checked that. But you were concerned that a few negative comments or a few comments might skew the results. Yeah. You don't actually need a huge amount of responses to a survey like that for it to give you a really good feel for how residents feel. In the report, you will see an indirect comparison with the national LGA results, they actually only poll 100 people. It's a different methodology, so it's a more representative sample, but it's of the entire country. But they only poll 100 people, whereas we've got over 2,000. Was it over 2,000? Yeah, over 2,000. So once you get to a certain point, you're probably not going to get that many different views. That said, we need more younger people, and by younger, I'm talking under 45, really.
Still qualify then.
Yeah. So that when we weight the results by age, it's a better spread. So our focus next time will not be on getting a bigger number overall, but it will be on that demographic. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
And then the others, if we can come back to you on.
Yeah. So I'll just come to Councillor Tucker and then I'll come to you, Greg.
Yes, believe it not, I was quite happy with the environmental section, so I haven't got any questions on that. But again, the resident survey, I think, threw up some things. One of which you've already answered, which is the under 45s. I was concerned about that. The other one that concerned me was that there was a breakdown given of a satisfaction with our areas, and Evesham was really poor compared to Droitwich and Pershore. Droitwich was 86% of people were satisfied, Pershore 91%, Evesham was 60%. And I'm assuming that you do more analysis to find out what the answers are. Could you come back with us at some point, to us rather, with that? Because I think I'm quite concerned about that.
There are a couple of things there. So that breakdown is only for those people who actually give a postcode, which not all respondents do, although a lot do. We do give people the opportunity to put free text comments in the survey, and some of those will perhaps give reasons as to why Evesham residents might be less satisfied than the other areas. I mean, I think the Riverside Centre will be one, and traffic congestion will probably be another. But we have done further analysis, so we can share some of that across the district as a whole. I think also, thinking off the top of my head now, but I think possibly street cleaning might have been a third one.
Thanks very much, Jerry.
So speaking on the lack of responses from under 45-year-olds, I was curious, how was the resident survey distributed? Like, how did it get to people and how were they asked to respond to it?
So it's promoted in all our usual ways, so media, social media. Many of you promoted it really well, thank you very much, through parish councils and things. I think the reality is the younger age group is less interested in engaging. Maybe they have less time, I don't know. So if anyone has any bright ideas of how we can do more to engage that sort of age range. Well, we did have an incentive. We had a £100 prize draw. So there was four prizes, yeah. So there was an incentive, which actually some respondents chose not to participate in. So, yeah.
It's manpower, but I would suggest potentially going to a couple of the schools and literally being there at collection time and having a little army of people asking surveys, because there's a linger time there that's a sort of demographic you're looking for. And I'm sure people will be willing when asked. You might not want to hear the answers always, but I'm sure there's also a lot of positivity that will come out of it. But that might just be a quick way. If you did Droitwich, Evesham and Pershore in a couple of villages, it might be quite a good representative sample. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. On the last point, I know when I'd seen data on workforces within Wychavon, there was a lot of our residents would work outside of Wychavon. I'm not sure if that's changed, but would there be any value in taking the We Are Wychavon survey to workplaces, especially industrial estates around the district, Because I've known a lot of the people I've grown up certainly have worked in the industrial areas, especially around Droitwich and are sort of on our Five Ways industrial. But those sort of places possibly encourage our larger employers in the district to see if they'd support it as maybe a half-an-hour activity or something around their workplaces.
Yeah, we probably could do more to promote it with our existing business contacts. I think going around industrial estates would be quite resource intensive. But encouraging our contacts to put it on, if they've got intranet sites or, the equivalent of, is a good suggestion. Thank you. And the school one, which actually we thought of as well. Yeah.
Let me just claim that one.
But I like that linger time. I've written that down.
Well, everyone's waiting outside of school, aren't they, for something? Right. Is there any other questions? I've just got a couple that I got home from being on a long weekend and I've got some questions. I just want to raise them here because the things that I pulled out most significantly were to do with the planning department and some of the statistics that came out there. So I know why we would see, on average, maybe sometimes people being less satisfied with the planning department, but we've seen a significant reduction again. I think some of the pushback on that is obviously some of the things that we understand are still ongoing around the SWDPR and 5-year allowance and land supply and stuff. But I think the point that I'd like to make is, are we doing enough to communicate the nuances and the difficulties that we are facing as a planning authority and how some of these things will be changed, not because of anything we've done, but because they've been mandated by a government change through the process. And I guess the point is that what people don't know, then they start to make assumptions on. But equally, there are some, the fact that we have seen issues with, so planning appeals are up as well, being allowed, but equally the time taken for planning applications to be dealt with is also significantly up as well. Almost talking 20% difference there. And I guess the thing is I'm grateful to Kieran when he has come to the committee. The last time he did that was almost a year ago. When he came, the report that we got was that actually the planning department was sort of burning on all cylinders again. My concern is it still burning on all cylinders, and has there been a shift? Now, and the reason why I'm being hesitant about the way I word it is because I don't feel it's fair, because Kieran's not here to answer that question, and I've not given time for them to come back. So I'm treating it all with a massive pinch of salt, but some of that stuff doesn't make for good reading. And what I also, the challenge that we have here as an authority is we are known, if nothing else, for the fact that we are the planning authority. And that type of satisfaction score is not great. And what would we want to do to try and tackle that? That's a lot there. I can give those questions. I will send those questions to Spencer and pass them on. Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
I mean, as you know, I'm not a planning expert, so I think the performance of the planning service is still good, and I think that is reflected in the report. I think the perceptions of planning reflected in the survey are not necessarily about the planning service per se. They're because people don't like all the new development, and I think it is a big issue for us, and it is potentially damaging to our reputation. Planning always comes up as something people aren't happy with, but it's reflected much more strongly in the last survey. So I think we have got a job to do to explain things a bit more clearly to people.
Maybe an opportunity with that will be, every meeting we put something in the Wychavon magazine lately, but something about, this is where we were when we started this process, and this is where we are now coming towards the end of it. And actually, the things that have shifted, the sands that have shifted in that, and actually against us, that have made the process much harder and will make the process much harder in the future. And I think for a lot of people just keep saying, well, we're getting Wychavon Town, that's going to solve all our problems. Well, we know it's not going to solve all our problems, so it would be a significant chunk. But I think, if we could do some communication around that, then it feels like that might be helpful, because it doesn't feel like a fair reflection on our planning service. But like I say, those things they stood out to me once I was reading the report. Okay. so we can move on to the next slide. So then we have the Corporate Peer Challenge Progress Review. I think that's just for noting, unless Vic or Jane, you wanted to say anything specifically to, or Cherry even.
It is just for noting, Chairman. That exercise is now completed. We've been left with some actions that we still need to progress. We probably haven't made as much progress as we would have liked to, because key people have been distracted by LGR and all the stuff we've had to do around that. But we are still making good progress. So we're quite pleased with that, and there's more to do as always.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 8 then, which is... So, sorry.
In terms of place, I didn't have anything particular to say, but I think we discussed this about the empty home strategy, and I wondered, I have touched on it with Jen, about the process of it, about the beginning, middle, end of how one identifies a property, I know there are grants available for property. I won't not talk about it now, but if Jen, perhaps we could have a discussion of an update of how, what, why, when. It depends on what the chair thinks.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah. Okay. So then item 8 is the budget and money plan for 2030-31.
Thank you, Chair. So the report for this evening is a report that went to Executive Board on the 11th, so last week. Gosh. There has been some changes since the Executive Board report, and that will go through to full council. And a couple of those are in relation to the budget scrutiny. So it's good news in terms of the £100,000 for the first steps, we're calling it first steps energy efficiency. That was the replacement of natural networks that came up through budget scrutiny, and also the 412,000, which was the funding to replace the UK SPF, which also came up through budget scrutiny. So they're both included in the report that you've got in front of you this evening. The additional ones that are over and above the budget scrutiny, there was a proposal, and again, all these are due to be recommended at full council next week, for community legacy grants, so a much smaller scheme from the scheme that we've had running over the last number of years, which has used generally the New Homes Bonus funding. So 400,000 for more revenue schemes with community groups, and also 21,000 to purchase some cabinets to ensure that the artefacts that were found at Milestone Ground are then kept in Broadway. So we've got some funds already that have been allocated as part of the scheme, but this is a further 21,000 on that. Just on the UK SPF, I've had a chat to Ian, because I know that was an area that members were really keen on understanding. So last year there was £1.5 million in previous years, which was the UK SPF total funding. There's £1 million from government and £500,000 of ours. So what we're looking at is we'd have around just shy of £900,000 for both years of funding. And this would be, so it is a significant reduction, but the team believe it can be used to support businesses both in town and rural areas. So the proposal is that the funding will be used for a growth fund for businesses and events in towns, but also a rural fund for the same within the rural areas. Specific measures to support hospitality and venues, an inward investment approach to try to make Wychavon the place that people want to come and have their businesses, and also tourism for marketing and events. The proposal is that this will be delegated to the director and the leader as the portfolio holder, Councillor Morris, and there'll be 6 monthly reporting to Overview and Scrutiny and also to Executive Board, just to explain the projects that have been delivered. So that was just as mentioned, because I know that we talked about that, and I know Spencer had highlighted it as part of the reporting as well. So the budget itself, again, the main page is on page 109, which is the money plan, and it currently shows 26 million at the bottom to have in balances. This report includes a 2%. The report that's come to this evening is the original report that includes a 2% increase in council tax. Executive Board recommended that would be changed to a 0, so a freeze in council tax, excuse me, for 2026-27 and also 2028, and also proposed a £5 million in 26-27. We are Wychavon Support Fund. The details to be develop over the next month or so. So the figures have changed, and you will see the pack that's gone to full council for next week. Excuse me. Instead of 26 million at the end of 2031, there's 18 million. Sorry. It's caught some dust. I do apologise. So that's a slight change. What's happened? That is a slight change from the report that's come this evening and the report that went to Executive Board. So happy to pick up any questions, Chair, hopefully, or Vic will, or Sherry will. And then, as I say, revised reports going to full council that's been published in the last day.
Thank you. Has anyone got any question? Sorry, Councillor Tucker.
I don't know if I should say Jane. Somebody. The 900,000, is that replacing the 412 that was suggested by budget scrutiny, or is that on top of, or what's the situation, please?
So there is a budget of 500,000 already that was approved way back when.
Right, okay.
So the 412 is topping that up to the 900,000 for the next each year for the next 2 years.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Jane, sorry. So the lack of the 2% freeze for 3 years then, 2 years. So from so it will be 26 million down to 18 million. So what, sorry, can you just...
So if I can explain, sorry. So in 2026-27, there is a change in terms of the council tax. So within the papers that you had for this evening, there was a council tax increase of 2%. Yeah. But what the members are proposing for full council is that's reduced to 0. So that makes £128,000 change. That's all. It doesn't make a huge change. So it's £128,000 in next year. In the following year, because of the compound increase, it's £460,000. So it's around £600,000 over the 2 years. But in addition to that, members proposed the £5 million We Are Wychavon Support Fund, so that's why the figure has changed by roughly £5.5 million.
Councillor Wilkins.
I have a question about, on page 78, the 2.449 million for the Riverside Shopping Centre. Is that just the purchase price, or is that for the whole project?
So that's at the additional, can I just quickly find, did you say page 79?
78, sorry. 78, sorry.
I don't want to look at paper, but there you go, I will do. 2.4949. So that's the amount that went through at the last executive meeting for council, when that's our allocation that we need to put towards the Riverside Centre. So members are aware there's a grant coming as well to ensure that we've got the full purchase price. So that's the only funding that we're having to set aside.
So that's all we're putting into the project at all?
Sorry, Vic's just reminded me, that's on top of the 4 million that we've already got set aside, that was already in the budget. Probably about 5 years ago, actually, 4 million was set aside for the redevelopment of the public hall, refurbishment and redevelopment of the public hall, which was just the frontage really of the building. So what we're looking to do is move that into the whole redevelopment now. So we'll have the grant funding and our own funding of around £6.4 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking at page 114, and I just wanted to understand whether the 5 million that we've set aside as a Wychavon support fund, clearly I think capital projects, things that you can touch and feel and that will have a legacy element and that will last for a long time, in my view at least, would be preferable to something that is just going to be here today and gone tomorrow, which might not be remembered either by ourselves or the residents. And just reading that, it sort of said that we've got to ensure that we're committed to projects before the shadow authority comes in essentially and starts to have some influence as to what's being spent where. I just wanted to understand what committed to would mean. So if we think of a project today, we're not necessarily going to get it built by 27 or 28. What level of commitment do we need to have in place in order for it to pass that test?
Thank you. Looking at other authorities who've gone through the same process, if you've got a commitment already in place, so you've got that approved and it's in your capital programme, then it's okay. So if it would be a new commitment, then that would be one, and a new decision, that would be flagged up.
I don't think 5 million's enough, personally. The question is on the UK SPF replacement fund. So I appreciate how that will work now, but that money has been replaced by now council taxpayers' money and not government-funded money. And my concern isn't the right word. I just would like to see sometimes a bit more conversation with local members about how that money is spent, or then is how it's spent. I get an email every single week from the planning department about every single planning application in Wychavon. If I find out about money being spent in my ward, it's usually through a press release. So I know that's a very specific subject point, and maybe I'm abusing my position as chair. The point is I just think it would just be good to understand how that's been working. So I think probably the next thing is that we say, so we did have quite a detailed update from, I forget the officer's name, Elspeth, on which was a fantastic update on what UK, and it's clear the impact that funding's had and how we've utilised it and made it work. And I don't doubt for a second that we'll make that £412,000 work extremely hard as well, and that will add to the legacy that we will create as Wychavon. I think it would be good to consider how we can get Ian, because I can't remember the last time we had an update from Ian on economy in particular, to just come, and I think probably looking out how we outrun these next 2 years as a council, and his plans for that would be really helpful. So we can look at the work plan. Well, obviously, we'll come to that at one point, but I think that would be something to maybe highlight to him that we'd like to do sooner rather than later, considering that, you know, we haven't got much time left.
And just to mention, Chair, Ian's just sent me a Teams message because he's listening in.
Oh, is he?
So he said he's absolutely happy to either update local members, absolutely, but also provide an update to the...
I don't know how sorry I feel for him that he's watching us when he's at home, but there we go.
I've already said
that. Okay, Councillor Day, and then we'll...
Thank you. Yeah, so just following on from that, so my understanding was that with the UK SPF, we were always under a lot of pressure to spend the money within a fixed time frame, which the government had specified. This is us funding the UK SPF, and so I was just assuming, therefore, that the rules that Jane's just outlined, that we would just have to be committed, we'd have had to have made a decision, would be sufficient, and that we don't necessarily have to have the same sense of urgency behind the decisions, which I guess supports your point, Chairman, that to a certain extent maybe we've got a bit more time to share the ideas and perhaps get more thoughts from other people, because I could understand the need when you've got a lot of time pressure and a lot of money to spend, that we would only have a small number of people, but we don't have the time constraint, I don't think, in the same way this time round.
If I can, Chair, absolutely, that's true. One of the pressures that we've had is around that timing with the UK SPF, but also when the government has allowed us to carry it forward, it's been quite late on in the day, because we found out around November time, you don't have to spend it by the end of March, it can be the end of September. But of course, we'd made sure that we could spend it by the end of March. So clearly, when it's our own funding, we won't be under those same limitations and restrictions.
Is it really quick?
So based on what we're talking about there, the money's going to be going to the place boards, but the place boards are going to need to know each year, I would say, they're given an allocation each year to what they're having, or how does it work with them?
The money will sit with us, so there will be projects that we will discuss with the place board, discuss with local members, and that's where the funding then gets channelled. We don't give it to all of the place board.
Perfect, thank you. Right. Sorry, Councillor Morris.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Just on the economy and place boards, we've said we'll come to scrutiny. That's fine, and we can look at how we communicate out the projects. We're looking at terms of reference at the moment, so we will build something in about communication. Not all the money will go to the place boards. Some will be on Wychavon projects, so they will get an allocation. Well, we'll look at the projects that they're looking to bring forward and judge it on that basis, rather than them getting a budget like the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which initially had to be completed by the end of March. So you're quite right, Chris, on that basis. So that built an urgency and an issue, effectively, of spend in that sense. in terms of the 5 million, Charlie, you said that's not enough. If there are good ideas, we're always happy to listen. We can always say no, but if they're really good, we'll want them for Wychavon, because we're proud of Wychavon and we want to leave that legacy.
Great, right. So we've got the HOSC update. I've asked Mark to be brief.
I am brief.
And he will be.
I will. On the agenda is the last HOSC meeting, which was formalised, which was on the 18th, last year, effectively. I gave a verbal update on the previous meeting, and this is a written update actually on the agenda. So I won't go into that much more detail. We've only had one meeting since that, which was on the 11th of this month. So it isn't on the agenda tonight because of the timescale, but that was the annual review of public health. It was a big document of over 20 pages. So I'll summarise it. Essentially, the major point was the measles immunisations, both in this area, which is higher than everywhere else, but it is still not at herd immunity. And parts of our Wychavon district border Birmingham, for example, which is extremely poor. So there's still work to be done on that particular area, and that's probably the main thrust of the public health direction at the moment, besides other aspects, but that's the major draw from that. We also had a summary from the West Midlands ambulance service, which is very interesting. Until last year, we had the highest number of lost hours in waiting times for ambulances at hospitals, of over 50,000 hours. Now, that is significantly more than anywhere else, by over 50%. Since February of this year, they've introduced a reduction in handover time in Worcester Acute, starting in week 1 for 4 hours, week 2, 3 hours, week 3, 2 hours, and week 4, 45 minutes. The aim is to get down to 18-minute handover times. So that's just started now, so we look forward to seeing how that goes. But a full report will be at the next HOSC meeting for this. If you've got any questions based on the agenda items there, I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, Councillor.
Just very quickly, based on the measles scenario, is there anything that we can do, like, I'm thinking of like Wychavon News or anything, whether we're able to do that, promote getting children immunised? I don't know whether we're allowed to do that type of scenario, but, is there anything that we can literally do to encourage this?
I think if you've got any contacts with residents groups or communities, that's perfect. I mean, there are certain groups which are hard to reach, and there are pop-up clinics all over Wychavon on areas where there's reduced uptake in terms of GP surgeries, so there are outreach programs always going ahead with public health in the area. So if you know of any areas which are underrepresented or are disenfranchised, access is available. You don't have to go to the GP. There are pop-up clinics around. So they're happy to take any advice or any recommendations from anybody to try and increase the uptake of the measles vaccine.
So putting it through the Wychavon News, could we do that? Say that very thing through our Wychavon?
I'll take that away, liaise with public health.
Yes, I think if you speak to Lisa.
And if possible, speak to Lisa, and if possible, include something in the magazine. We won't want to cut across anything that they're doing already, but we'll take that away we'll look at that. We'll look at that.
Thank you very much. Right, so, go on. That was very quick, thank you. The ONS Scrutiny work plan. So we've got the next meeting is the 8th of April. We've got rooftop housing group down. we may want to just follow up on whether they confirm their attendance for sure. We have the street cleaning update, which, given the resident survey, will be an interesting thing to hear. And then the we at Wychavon, that will go to the next July meeting. So, is there any comment on the work plan in particular? Apart from, the only thing I'd like to say is maybe that's a good opportunity to have Ian, if he's around, to come and give us a bit of a presentation.
Not strictly looking at forward, but going back to what we had with the EA, I seem to remember when we had a visit from Severn Trent, they promised us that we could see a copy, we could receive a copy of their next 5-year plan. Can we try and ensure that we get that, please?
Rooftop weren't here that long ago, and then Angie went and attended one of their resident groups, didn't you?
Yeah, I think he said he would come. It was Mark when he came last time.
That was it. Yeah.
He said that he would come after they were doing, what was it?
Trying to get the gold standard.
Some sort of.
Yeah, it was, they're working towards progress towards a C1 status, a C1 plan.
Yeah. And he would be able to update us at that point where we were at.
And when was the last time they came?
It would have been last April.
Was it last April? Oh my God. Okay. Well, maybe we can ask where they're at with it, because if they haven't got to that point yet, it might not be worth their while, unless they want to give us a written update, and then we can ask them to come back once they've actually got to that point. Unless do you agree with that or not? Yeah? Okay. Right, and then we've got the executive forward plan. Any comments on that? Yes, Councillor Tucker.
Just to thank you that there are some dates on there that don't say not before.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Jane does listen to me.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you.
So any comments on that in particular? No? Okay. And then we have the date of the future meeting, which is Wednesday the 8th of April. So thank you very much. We managed to do it in 2 hours. I didn't think we'd make it, but we did. So thank you all very much. I'll call the meeting closed.